Big Ten, who's watching? Welcome to the Voice of College Football. We break down the game we all love each and every day with you. Best discussion, debate, and analysis because of your participation. Please like the video. Even if you don't agree with me, if you enjoy the conversation, please like the video and subscribe right here at the Voice of College Football. Make sure that bell's turned on for the notifications to know when we go live. Considering the Pac-12's current situation of trying to negotiate a new media rights deal, we felt this is a great time to look at TV ratings for 2022 and gain a perspective on why the Pac-12 is struggling in trying to acquire major media television rights, also streaming and digital rights included in this day and age. And we are comparing the Pac-12 against the other four conferences. No, this is not completely exhaustive. It's not a 10-year study. However, it's very, very solid, very supportive in regards to what is happening there on the college football landscape. Consider that if the Big Ten has great TV ratings one year, they don't collapse the next year. These are consistent year to year. We will continue the series with a wrap-up show now that we've done all the conferences. Check out the links in the comments section to check out the SEC, the Big 12, the ACC, and the Pac-12. And again, a big wrap-up show where we will compare and contrast and provide perspective and context, most of all, to these television ratings. Ohio State and Michigan, not much context here. It was the number one rated game in all of college football last year. 17 plus million people watched the noon Eastern time game on Fox. It was the number one rated game in all of college football again for an umpteenth consecutive season. So Ohio State, Michigan typically is the number one game, not always, but certainly with where the programs currently stand, it blew away Tennessee, Georgia, which was at number 2. Then the SEC filled in the other spots. So you see here the top 10 games in the Big Ten, non-conference games excluded. These are just conference games that we are looking at right now. And the Big Ten came in strong, of course, with Ohio State and Penn State. That was the 5th most watched game in college football regular season among conference games. Then we also see Ohio State, Maryland. So the Buckeyes rank 1, 2, and 3 in the Big Ten. Then we've got the Penn State-Michigan matchup, over 6 million viewers. And these numbers, if you've checked out the other videos, compare them against the ACC, the Big 12, and the Pac-12, and then separate the SEC and the Big 10, and you see why they're making all the money. People watch the SEC and the Big 10. Michigan State, despite a 5-7 year by Sparty, still a strong viewership there on ABC. Illinois, Michigan, near the end of the season, drew a good rating, over 5 million viewers. Ohio State, Northwestern, you would consider that to be a bit of a dog game, but look how many people showed up. That was more people than watched every game in the ACC, excluding 2. Every game in the Pac-12, excluding nothing. More people watched Ohio State and Northwestern than watched USC and UCLA. Then to round out the top 10, we've got Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan State, and Nebraska Northwestern. All told, Ohio State shows up 6 times in the top 10 in the Big Ten, and Michigan 4 times. Anybody else there? Penn State with 2 showings in the top 4 against, of course, Ohio State and Michigan. Now let's go week to week through the college football season and include the non-conference games, and let's consider that even though the Big Ten is a massive brand, there were not a whole lot of marquee non-conference matchups. It was Ohio State, Notre Dame. Then what? Iowa State. Nebraska, Oklahoma. Yes. So let's march through the season, starting with weeks 0 and 1, and see where the Big Ten stacked up, both non-conference and conference games. The Big Ten delivered 3 of the top 6 games in weeks 0 and 1. The conference game, surprisingly, Nebraska Northwestern, but consider, let's put this into context. There was no competition for that game on Fox. It was played in week 0, Nebraska Northwestern, the 10th most watched game in the Big Ten last year. But the number one game through the first 2 weeks of the season was Notre Dame, Ohio State, with over 10.5 million viewers. It's pretty astounding to note that Michigan, Colorado State on ABC at noon Eastern time got almost 4 million viewers. That's the highest rated game of a Power 5 against a Group of 5, and it's not even a good matchup. It was a blowout, a massive blowout. So I'm sure they lost viewers in the second half. And on top of that, That game rated higher than most of the top 10 in the other conferences, excluding the SEC. And then you see where the Big Ten shows up, let's see, 3, 6, 7, 8 times in the top 20. So huge start of the season for the Big Ten in TV ratings. Let's go to week 2 and see that the Big Ten played nothing but non-conference games, and we see 3 in the top 12, 4, 5, 6 in the top 15 for the Big Ten in week 2. In week 3, Penn State went to Auburn as the SEC and the Big Ten got together for the only time in the regular season, and that was the highest-ranked game of the week. In week 4, we dive into conference play again, and the Big Ten shows up well with 2 of the top 3 games of the week, and then games that rank number 14, number 16, and number 24 in conference, and then a couple non-conference games that ranked in the top 30. On to week 5 and another solid showing from the Big Ten with the number 3 ranked game of the week in terms of viewership, 3 of the top 12 and 4 of the top 16, and then 6 in the top 20 in week 5. As we move on to week 6, we see that the Big Ten once again had the second most watched game of the week, and the SEC went on a run mid-season where for 4 or 5 consecutive weeks the SEC had the most watched game of the week, games like Alabama, Tennessee, Georgia, Tennessee, and so forth. But in week 6, the Big Ten shows up strong with 2 of the top 4 games and then a bit of a drop-off with some of the lesser teams filling in those number 14 through 23 spots. Week 7 in the Big Ten, and again, it's the second most watched game of the week. Also 2 of the top 6, 3 of the top 15, 4 of the top 16, 5 total from the Big Ten. All conference games placed in the top 20 for that week 7 of college football. In week 8, the Big Ten strong again, but gets nudged out by the SEC in the first couple slots. The Big Ten had 2 of the top 6 ranked games, also 3 of the top 10, and all 5 of these conference games. So we had 5 conference games from the Big Ten, and also consider that we had a number of situations in which the Big Ten Network regionalized the games and provided a package where you would see, let's say, 1 of 3 Big Ten games. So that's where some of those fall into the rankings in week 8 and throughout the middle portion of the season. On to week 9, and the Big Ten finally claims the number 1 spot over the SEC, with also 3 of the top 6 games of the week coming from the Big Ten, as the Big Ten and the SEC dominate the TV landscape with the 15 most watched games in college football in 2022 in the regular season, SEC and Big Ten games. We move on to week 10, and it's more of the same with the Big Ten looking strong, although the SEC had the top-rated games. The Big Ten at number 3, number 7, number 10. There you see 5 of the top 16, and then some lesser games in the Big Ten, that even the lesser games in the Big Ten are still well over the 1 million mark, and you don't see that across college football in 3 of the other 4 conferences. As we move on to week 11, it's almost a carbon copy of week 10, as the Big Ten placed at number 3, number 7, number 10, and then had 4 other games in the top 26 in the nation. Again, the top of the league, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State dominate the ratings boost by the Big Ten. In week 12, Maryland, surprisingly, as a 4-touchdown underdog, gave Ohio State a game down to the final few minutes of the contest, and it kept college football fans intrigued as the top-ranked game of the week. The Big Ten, in fact, had the top 2 games of week 12, as Michigan, Illinois, again, another big favorite at the top of the league, struggled and almost lost as Illinois almost pulls out that victory against Michigan. So college football fans intrigued by the games prior to the game, as those were the top 2 most watched games of the week. You see the Big Ten had 4 of the top 10 and 5 of the top 14 in week 12. As we move on to week 13, of course, the game, Ohio State, Michigan, dominant, but really nothing else in the Big Ten that particular week. As you go all the way down the scale to find the 17th, 19th, 20th, and 23rd most watched games of the week. So aside from Ohio State and Michigan going at it, the other games not that intriguing to everyone watching college football that particular week. Here's another interesting way in which we are tracking viewership and giving it a level of context. So we are basically setting milestones, 5 million, 4 million, 3 million, 2 million viewers, and seeing out of the entire landscape of conference games for that particular conference. Of course, we're looking at the Big Ten right now. How many of those games are hitting the million mark, the 2 million mark, the 3 million mark? And again, we encourage you to check out the other videos from the other conferences to gain some perspective on that. We're going to wrap it all up and provide a concluding video to this series as well. But check out the Big Ten, 63 conference games, and all of them were on Fox, one of the ESPN networks, or the Big Ten Network. And that helps out viewership because the Big Ten Network, as a regional network of sorts, it's really not a regional network. It is based on its conference affiliation, but it's a national network and gets rather strong rankings. The Big Ten, of course, had the only game in college football that got 17 million views. It had 2 games that got at least 8 million views, including the Ohio State-Penn State game. Then 4 games over 6 million views, 6 games over 5 million, 14 games over 4 million. So this is where you really see a break-off between the Big Ten and the other conferences, not named the SEC, where for the other conferences, they had 2 or 3, maybe 4 games with at least 4 million viewers. And for the Big Ten, 14 over 4 million, 18 over 3 million, 22 games over 2 million viewers, and 38 games over 1 million views. Maybe when we do the big wrap-up video, we'll actually look at those games that did the worst. How about that? We could possibly look at that. Which games on a network basis from what conferences did the worst in college football to kind of balance it out between what we are weighting as the best and most popular brands and games for the 2022 season. Again, this is not completely exhaustive. I know a number of you will say, what about this? What about that? But it is a strong, strong look at college football popularity between the 5 conferences. And again, join us for our next video because we wrap it all up. Check out the ones that we posted in the comments section below. And of course, leave your comments below. We will talk it up as we always do right here at the Voice of College Football.